Harry Potter and the Adventure in AI is written and read by an AI. Chapter 1. Hermione woke in her own bed at the leaky cauldron, the clock on her nightstand saying 9:30 a.m. She rolled onto her back, stretching out her arms as she did so. She looked down at herself and frowned. "Why am I wearing my pajamas?" she said aloud. There was no response. She reached behind her head and felt a large lump. With some effort, she managed to pull her hand out from under the pillow and held it up for inspection. It was covered with bright orange hair that was growing in wildly all over her face. Her fingers came away sticky. Somewhere behind her, someone laughed, and Hermione turned to look at a group of people sitting near the fireplace, drinking butterbeer. They were all looking at her, and Hermione realized she had made quite a racket with her outburst. Quickly, she sat up and smoothed down the tangled hair that had come loose while trying to wake. Her cheeks reddened, and she smiled awkwardly, hoping that she hadn't ruined their morning too much. The group chuckled again, before one man spoke up. "So what do we have here then?" "Sleeping Beauty awakes." He leant forward towards her, resting his arm casually on the table. It was Ron being awkward as usual. His face was flushed red, his eyes darting between hers and the others. He was always uncomfortable around her after last year's debacle. He was still in denial about their kiss during the Quidditch World Cup. After a few more hours, he stopped bringing up the topic whenever possible. She didn't want things to be weird between them again, but when she started dating Seamus Finnegan, things took a turn for the worse, because Seamus had been flirting non-stop. Which was annoying Hermione, because they were only together due to Seamus's friendship with Ron. When he saw Hermione kissing Dean Thomas, Hermione was a bit of a slut. She'd gone from zero interest in anyone to an infatuation within seconds. But even though Seamus was very attractive, he wasn't her type, nor did he make her want to go out every chance he got like Dean Thomas did. In the end, she'd broken off the relationship, leaving Dean confused. But now, 2 months later, Seamus had asked her out once more, and the whole thing had been awkward enough. This time, he wanted to take her somewhere nice, like a restaurant or maybe the cinema. She'd told him she'd already had plans with Neville Longbottom. It was the truth, although not entirely true. Hermione had invited him along, because he would be there to protect her, if anything went wrong. But that didn't mean she liked having him around her. Especially since it meant that they'd have to spend time together at the cinema. Harry then burst into the room. He looked frightfully furious. He shouted, "We're supposed to be going to the Ministry today. Remember? We're meeting Kingsley Shacklebolt for our first job interview." "You'll never believe what he said to me." Hermione stood up. Kingsley Shacklebolt? That name sounded vaguely familiar. Wasn't he one of that minister who had resigned? What was he doing here again? Yes, well, you see, he was actually talking to me before you came through the door, and suddenly this big guy appeared and interrupted him, and... "Harry," said a gruff voice from across the table. "You can cut out the dramatics. Kingsley and I have been working together ever since your father was Minister of Magic. He's done quite a lot for us. Why don't you sit down, Mr. Potter, and start from the beginning?" It was Hagrid sitting on a chair drinking a large jug of beer. "What are you doing here?" asked Ron. "Just drinking," Hagrid replied, spilling beer into his thick beard. "So anyway," Harry attempted to continue, but Hermione could tell he was getting irritated at the interruption by Ron. She decided to step in and give the poor boy some space. "Right," she said. "So where were we?" She grabbed a roll from the basket by the edge of the fire. "So what are we gonna do today? What are we gonna do today? What?" Ron said repeatedly, annoying everyone. "Shut up!" Both Harry and Hermione yelled back, simultaneously. Their faces turned scarlet at their tempers, and Ron shrunk in his seat with shame. She looked over at Harry and apologized, which Harry seemed to accept. "Sorry, Ron," Hermione whispered to him. He nodded in return, and they returned to their breakfast together. As soon as they finished eating, Hermione quickly changed into her uniform and ran out of the common room to meet Seamus and Ron outside, just outside the front door. As expected, Seamus had left early to get some work done on his motorbike. Ron was in his pajamas and had been waiting outside his own dormitory in hopes of catching Hermione. "I'm gonna miss you, Hermione," Ron mumbled to himself before following Hermione into the entrance hall.